Okay, next, before we take a break, is Pinnacle. And this is another of a very similar business model, although it's a little bit more linked to the importation and redistribution of some foreign technology brands. The interesting thing about this one is that it had a bit of a disaster 3 or 4 years ago where there were some accusations of tender irregularities which then went away, but it went from being a market darling to being a bit of a market scoundrel, and it's now in something of a rebuild mode, which is interesting because it then creates the sense that maybe there's a bit of an opportunity. Market capitalization 2.7 billion rand. Price earnings ratio is still depressed at 7.69, not a dividend payer at current level. Arnold Fourie, the CEO, the founder, one sense that he was sort of away a little bit, but he's certainly come back in, although there's a new CEO coming on. But the company itself well positioned, 1 or 2 issues currently.
Yeah, I think it was a really difficult time for them after those fraud allegations, and I think it distracted the management quite a bit.
Yeah.
So we saw some heavy write-downs within some of the suppliers that they were holding, and I think that speaks to the challenges that distributors and importers face. I mean, if you don't move your product quite quickly, it can become obsolete, and it's also not very easy with the rand.
Let's have a look at the share chart, because then you'll see what we're talking about here. So that crash there in 2014 was exactly when people said, but crumbs, if they're being accused of tender irregularities on a deal with the South African Police Service, and they derive a lot of business from dealing with the South African government, then, you know, if there's going to be a court case and they're going to be... But that case was thrown out, perhaps because there was a lack of evidence or bad documentation and report keeping or something. So it wasn't like a complete victory, let it be said. The case was dropped.
It was dropped, and I think it will take time for them to restore their credibility, and I think that's what the market is waiting for. But they were also very, very highly leveraged, so they've taken the steps to deleverage their balance sheet. They sold down some properties.
Although it can be wise when you're under the cracker there and you're under the hammer, just to kitchen sink it. In other words, the market's not going to be impressed with, you know, sort of trying to juice up your earnings, so might as well just give it the full Monty. When I say it's recovered somewhat, let's have a look at the chart again. Right at the end there, you can see that in reaction to improved trading numbers, it's starting to edge higher. But there is another thing that's a little bit worrisome, and that is that Datacentrics, which is now their 55% held subsidiary, is currently being charged by some sort of industry-related thing where I think Data alleged that Datacentrics had obtained a contract from someone and they want the contract award reviewed.
Once again, I mean, they really are going to have to restore the credibility. So there's a lot of questions about that deal, and obviously given the history of Pinnacle, I think it really makes
and
a question.
And it is slightly strange. So this is Datacentric, which is still listed, which is their subsidiary because they've been acquiring the stakes in Bytes, but it still operates separately.
But essentially, I mean, what you really want is a big portion of managed service businesses.
Yeah.
And I think Datacentrics definitely will give them that.
Okay.
And it will reduce their dependency on the distribution business.
How are you going to call it now? Hot for you, or just too much going on? Not hot?
I don't want to be in the distribution space, so not hot for me.
Okay, go not hot, notwithstanding the recovery.